back to your career then, moving from Alloa to your beloved Rangers. Can you remember how the move came about and how the signing on, how proud you were when you signed on the dotted line?
Yeah, it was. We had a Scottish Cup game. I was playing for Alloa against Hamilton Accies away at Hamilton and in the old stadium there. And I remember we lost the game. We got a player sent off, and I ended up playing up front that night. We lost 2-1, and I managed to get a goal, but which is unusual for me, playing up front and also getting a goal. But Jock Wallace came. He came back to Rangers, and one of his first signings was Alec Totten to be his assistant. Alec had been at Falkirk, and he must have obviously asked Alec who they recommend from the lower leagues. I think there was a change in times at Rangers. They wanted to refresh the players, but maybe not a lot of money available, and Alec had sort of recommended me because he was my manager. It took me to Alloa as a young lad, and so he was at that game. And so after the game we were all disappointed, and Willie Garner, who was the manager at Alloa at the time, sort of came up to me after the game and said, Mr. Wallace, Jock Wallace of Rangers is outside, he wants to speak to you about joining Rangers. And I'm like, geez, you know. So you go from such a downer, actually losing a game of football, to being on such a high. But then he threw a real curly one at me. He said, look, I'm leaving next week to join Mr. Ferguson, Alec Ferguson at Aberdeen as his assistant, and Fergie wants you to go to Aberdeen. So I was didn't know what to do. I was completely and utterly, just over the moon with the opportunity of both those clubs, and I just made a decision there and then to speak to Big Jock, and that's what we did. We went outside in the very small corridors of Hamilton Accies at the time, and he said, right son, and he just gave us that growl that he always gave, and as he said to me, right son, you're coming to the Rangers. So there was no questions asked, he was telling you. And we then proceeded to walk into the Hamilton dressing room after the game, which there was still 3 or 4 players getting changed, and he was trying to find somewhere so we could have a conversation, and they ended up walking into the physiotherapy room at the back of the Hamilton change rooms, and went in there, and there was a physio giving treatment to some player, and he just walked in and looked at the two of them and pointed his finger and said, like, you out. And so he got rid of them out the room so we could have a chat, and he basically just said, you're coming to Rangers. Basically gave me whatever I was making as a worker at the BP Chemicals in Grangemouth, and he added it to what I was getting as a wage at Alloa, and that was what I was going to get at Rangers, and that was the start of the journey.
Yeah, fantastic. What was Jock like as a manager? He was a hard taskmaster, was he?
He was obviously real old school. He'd been very successful as a manager, obviously, in the past, but you knew, in no uncertain terms, his demands were massive. His training regimes were very, very physical, very, very hard, but he also had a real caring touch. I mean, I remember once in a game, midweek game, I caught a virus, a pneumonia virus, they said it was, and I was kind of put down for about a week, and I actually had to move back to my mum and dad's house so that somebody was there to look after us. And while I was sort of recovering in bed, there was a knock on the door one Tuesday night, and here it was. Mr. Wallace had made the effort to come all the way through to Grangemouth and knock on the door, which my mum opened up and had no idea who Jock Wallace was, and introduced himself and brought himself in just to make sure I was okay and check up on me and just to give me some support. And that was a caring side of Jock that a lot of people didn't see, and he was a fantastic man, and a great Rangers man. Yeah.
It's a tough time for the club, wasn't it, in the whole, but then Graeme Souness arrives and just revolutionises the whole club, doesn't he?
He did. He came in, and I think at the time, that was a time when the English clubs were banned from playing in Europe, and therefore it gave Rangers the opportunity. But really, it was Graeme Souness. I don't know if anybody else could have done it at that time. The timing was just perfect for Rangers to get Graeme Souness, who was a player manager, and he was only 31, 32 years of age at the time. Had no experience as a coach, but that was overseen by the fact he signed Walter Smith as his number 2. He's probably his best ever signing, and Graeme came in and just a whirlwind, basically signing Terry Butcher and Chris Woods and bringing in that established type of player, that calibre of player, and I know a lot of the players at the time in the dressing room were saying, it's not going to be much room for us, I better move on and find somewhere to go. I decided to just get my head down and get on with the work and see what happened, and I was fortunate enough that eventually I managed to get regular game time over the period of years and find a spot in the team.
What was he like as a manager? How did he differ from Jock?
Yeah, he was different. His information was a lot more, because he just came from Italy. His training was different. He was very. It was a completely different type of training he brought in, but it was very simple and quite repetitive in how he did his training. And it's funny looking at that. That he would give you the conversations, and it's a bit like I went to Blackburn Rovers and Kenny Dalglish was there, and I remember Kenny was starting off as a manager as well, and it's not so much the information they give you, and that little bit is just information that are very special, but it's the sort of way they give it to you, and the fact it's them that's giving it to you, it makes it seem so much more, strength behind the words. And Graeme had that, and he certainly, about Rangers, he knew that he knew that if he had good players, he'd never really had to coach them. You didn't have to tell Terry Butcher or Chris Woods or Richard Gough how to play the game of football. They knew how to play as a centre half or as a goalkeeper or as a right back better than he did, and he always said that. And therefore it was more a case of him managing the positions and the type of player he wanted in those positions to bring success to the club, and it was just fantastic. It seemed to be every couple of months we're bringing in a new player all the time, and it was just a really exciting place, and right through to even eventually when we signed Mo Johnston, it was just it was all fun and games, and it was always something was going on, and but the biggest thing was we were successful. We managed to win that first title that year, and then after that we continued on. No problem. So we managed to. We did lose the one where I think we lost Terry Butcher and we lost Gerrani in '88, and I'm sure that's what affected us more than anything to lose the title that year. But then to go on to then win the next 3 and put the foundations in place for 9 in a row when Graeme left in '91 and for Wattle to take over, and it was great time for the club.
Yeah. You mentioned there, Morris. What was? Were you boys in pre-season training in Italy or something when the news broke? It was quite a surprise.
It was a surprise to everybody apart from Mr. McCoy. He was the only one that knew about it apparently, and I remember we played in the Scottish Cup final against Celtic and we lost 1-0, and I always remember after the game Souness made some kind of comment about that team, talking about Celtic obviously, they think they've got something, well they haven't, and you'll know all about it pretty soon. And that was obviously the signing of Mo Johnston, which had been portrayed the week before as being coming back to Celtic from France, but instead Graeme had done a deal for him to bring him to Rangers.
And I mean yourself, Stuart, I mean you were a stalwart in that team and playing in that team full of stars, superstars as well. It must have been something else to star in a team, a successful winning team as well.
Yeah, and I never ever took my position in the team for granted at all. I couldn't, obviously. Graeme was always going out there looking to strengthen those positions, and many people said he needed to strengthen that position in the team, but I just got my head down and playing alongside people like Terry Butcher and Davy Cooper in front of you, and midfield players like himself and Graeme and Ray Wilkins and those types of guys. You can't help but be a good player. So many leaders in the team, so many characters in the team, but I was just continuously learning. The biggest thing I got probably was that I saw that Graeme had signed players for probably around about £1 million in every position apart from the left fullback position. He tried to bring in a few players, but it was always £200,000 or £300,000 players. So I always felt as if I had a chance to get back in there, and that was the way it always seemed to work out. And I was fortunate enough that I managed to do enough to eventually win over that position, and I played a number of games over the period of time, and we were very successful, so it was good.
You certainly did. You played in a number of big games as well. Is there any ones that stick out for you?
Yeah, look, I think there's I think the biggest one for me and probably for a lot of the supporters, because of the number of years we'd gone without winning a title, was winning that first championship in 86-87 season at Pittodrie, and I think that was the biggest thing for everybody, just to get that monkey off the back. I think obviously the expectation, the money the club had spent, bringing in Graeme as a manager and a whole new team and a whole new team of players to get success that year, was just the icing on the cake for that foundation to say, right, we're on the right way. Even though we lost the year after, I think that was the biggest one, just to get that foundation put in place that we are going places as a club and as a team once again. And I felt that as much as anybody else, even though I was still a fairly inexperienced player.